live. congregations. All of our speakers are here. We have been appreciating this fine evening and getting a chance to breathe, which is not to be underestimated. I'm Reverend Carrie Parker, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Council of Churches. Welcome to this Interfaith Vigil against gun violence. I want to say thank you to our site host, Common Grace. If you're a member of this congregation, would you wave your hand, please? I also want to thank the many congregations which were open to hosting tonight. I also honor this land and the people of the Ho-Chunk Nation who have made their home here for many generations before settler colonizers arrived with our own violent legacies. This event was organized in partnership between the Wisconsin Council of Churches, Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, and Moses. Many co-sponsors of this event, organizers, speakers who responded to this call we put out late last week to gather as an act of compassion, solidarity, and resistance to the status quo. Tonight we have community leaders present, parents and teachers and clergy members, all sharing their words. As people of faith, we're here because we know that the way things are is not the way things are meant to be. As you listen to the speakers tonight, if you do find that you need to step away to tend to your emotional needs, I invite you to do so, but don't do it alone. Find a friend to bring with you, because we're here in solidarity and compassion, and to remember that none of us is in this alone. We have an activity area for families over to my right. So way over near the fence, there are snacks and coloring pages and sidewalk chalk. And we have a table for activists who want more information about how they can advocate and or agitate. So please make sure you pick up an information sheet before you go and have a conversation with our advocates over there. I'd like to invite my colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Beich, to begin us with prayer.
Thank you, Reverend. Good afternoon, everyone. This is called a vigil. And a vigil is usually a time of watchfulness. It's an occasion to remain awake while others might be asleep. It's an occasion to keep watch for things to come and serving as an alert to impending danger. However, I offer these words of invocation to ask God to be with us today. Dear God, God of goodness, God of the world, this vigil and others like them across this country must be unlike any other. Help us with our sacred mission. Along with keeping watch over the leaders of this state and nation, where the pandemic of gun violence spreads, more than calling out those who appear to be asleep or indifferent or opposed to working to prevent gun violence deaths simply because calling them out brings them no shame, we demand action from them and from us. So God, be with us as we confront those who stand idle while our neighbors bleed. Dear God, God of the left and God of the right, a God who wants us to succeed regardless of party or ideology, we are here to press our elected leaders to lead. Give us strength and stamina to accomplish this mission. We will implore these leaders to move away from unresponsiveness and rather to act boldly. We pray that they will break free from their political masters to whom they are enslaved and act according to the desires of a majority of Wisconsinites and Americans who simply want to eliminate this pandemic of the proliferation of weapons. And so, dear God, God who guides and God who treasures humanity, God who appointed us to be stewards of this planet, accompany us through this undertaking. Teach us to lead where other leaders will not. Be with those leaders whose courage will move us toward healing. Help us rid the nation of the scourge of murderous gun violence. Keep our hands and hearts steady while we, inspired by your prophet Isaiah, turn arsenals of violence into implements of peace. May this be your will. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Next up is Pastor Judge Everett Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. I thought the best way for me to capture this moment when we talk about gun violence is to think about the personal ways in which, as a pastor and as a judge, I've had to do some very extraordinary things when it comes to violence. So in my car, to remind me of why I'm fighting is Anissa Scott. She was an 11-year-old girl who was killed while driving down East Wash, and then she was shot in the head. And I remember having to go into the hospital, because sometimes, not everybody gets to see a victim of what gun violence looks like. And I remember the family inviting me into the space and to the hospital room, and I remember looking at her young body with the bullet fragments in the back of her head that had exploded into her brain, and her head was swollen as she laid there. And I'm thinking to myself, God, what is this moment about? How do we change this moment? Because this baby will not be able to see the rest of her life because of senseless violence that happened in the street. Most of us are pastors, and we see these deaths, and we anticipate death happening in different ways. But gun violence feels different. Gun violence doesn't feel like a child has lived their course, that they've finished their race, that they've done everything that they've come. It seems like if something had reached into them and stolen something from them, that they'll never be able to get back. So the prayer that I always ask is that, God, how do we steal time back? How do we as people of faith come together in ways that will actually make impact and change the dynamics of power that seems to be ruling over our entire country? And so this is all I come up with sometimes, is that sometimes in order to meet power, change power, we have to meet power where it is. We can't be afraid as Christians and people of faith to not just have power. We can't be afraid to be courageous in our pulpits, to allow our members to understand the limits and boundaries of what sacrifice and commitment must look like. We can no longer be afraid to preach to the chorus of people. We must also have the courage to preach to people who don't always want to hear what we have to say. And we know full well that may cost us our job, or their tithes, or they may go to another congregation that tickles their ear a little bit better than we used to. But that doesn't mean that we stop preaching, and it doesn't mean that we stop teaching. So my one simple ask of you is, yes, let's press our legislators. That's cool. Let's make sure that they understand our passion. That's good. But I recommend that we start our own PACs. Oh, y'all just say amen on that. And that we fund our own PACs. Because you know what a PAC does? They put money behind people that reflects the values of the community that they want to see in that position, right? And if we don't have no PACs with people that we support, then guess what? All they're going to do is look at us and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. But they won't change. The only way to change power politically is to put people in positions that reflects the heart and have the courage to do exactly what we need them to do in the season in which we want to do it. Can I get a clap on that? And in our bubble of Dane County, we have wonderful people. We have wonderful people who who serve our community. But outside that bubble, we have to keep pushing. And we have to keep funding. And we have to find our brothers and sisters throughout the Wisconsin state, Wisconsinites everywhere, and pull them together and say, it is not just important for us to pray together. It is now important for us to fight together. And while all these gray hairs are beautiful, before y'all ride into the sunset, y'all need to give us power to make the change we need. Because they depend on you to be silent and to be apathetic, but you need to empower us with the ability to say, this is the time. Because nobody should have to say goodbye to their baby like this. Nobody should have to say, planning on summer vacations, have to turn into planning funerals. In my tradition, Jesus taught us a very special way. When the disciples got mad and were trying to keep the disciples and the families and the children away from them, Jesus told the disciples, hey, stop that right now! And he grabbed their kids. And he held them in his arms. And he put his hand on them and he blessed them. I told my church last Sunday, I said, this is the only place I've read in the Gospels where Jesus took somebody in his arms and held them. It was the children that people had denied access to. If Jesus grabbed them in his arms, I tell y'all, that's what we got to do too. God bless you. God bless you.
Next is the Reverend Miranda Hassett, who is a parent and the rector of St. Dunstan's Episcopal Church.
Well, it's tough to follow Pastor Mitchell, so I'm just going to tell you about my day. All right, get it closer. Is that better? I'm not going to do that, sorry. I got a kid with COVID at home. My church is over on the west side on University Avenue, and we're about half a mile from the lake shore over there. You can't really see it from the church, so it's easy to forget it's there, but we are close to the lake. And this year, a mama duck decided to come make her nest near the front door of our church. Mama Mallard. So we've been watching her for several weeks, watching her there, keeping tabs on her. I check on her every day to make sure she was okay. I was really aware of how vulnerable she was. There are coyotes around, there are foxes around. Anything could sniff her out and find her. And if some predator came to the nest, she wouldn't have any defenses at all. The only thing she could do is fly away and abandon the nest and save herself. She's defenseless. It made me think about that thing Jesus says about how he wishes he could gather God's people under his wings like a mother hen. And that image of the mother bird, that all she can do to protect her young is put her body over them. She doesn't have any defenses, a duck or a hen. All she can do is put her body between the ones she's trying to protect and the danger. And today when I got to church, the babies were happening. There were little fuzzy heads popping up around the duck we named her Marjorie, fuzzy heads popping up around Marjorie. I knew the hatching was happening. I've been ready for this for days because there's two busy streets between our church and the lake shore. So I went and got this big piece of fluorescent pink poster board that I'd written "Stop for Ducks" on it in really big black letters. And I perched outside my church and tried to work on my laptop for several hours, keeping tabs on her. And finally around 2 o'clock, she decided it was go time. She gathered up the babies and she set out, headed down towards the street. And I grabbed my pink paper and I went down and I stopped traffic for her. 1 lane, 2 lanes, 3 lanes, 4 lanes, stopped traffic for her so she got across that big street. Walked with her across a couple other properties until she was ready to cross the next big street. Stopped traffic for her there. 1 lane, 2 lanes, 3 lanes, 4 lanes. People were great about it. They were clapping when they saw the ducklings make it up onto the curb. Finally, she made it to the park, and I walked with her across the grass and got to watch her take them into the water for the first time. She left the church property with 11 babies. She reached the lake with 11 babies. And it just made me think about how vulnerable life is and how vulnerable parenthood is. We're all just trying to take the little fluffy things that have been entrusted to us and get them from point A to point B alive. Whether you're a parent or whether there are just young folks in your life that you love, or in your community. And it just seems to me like it's not too much for us to ask our elected officials and those with the power of wealth or of institutional leadership to do what they can, to do the moral equivalent of at least holding up that big pink piece of paper to stop traffic, to take steps and build movement towards some common sense reforms of gun laws for the greater safety of all our children. That's all.
Amen. Eugene, I'm calling Eugene Kessler from Moses.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming here tonight. It's an unfortunate reason why we're here. It's an unfortunate reason why we're here. But we're here together in solidarity, unity, with all different faiths coming together to talk about violence, gun violence. I'm going to speak as a parent, as a father. I have 4 children. My beautiful daughter is 8 years old, and I had to have a conversation with her about what she would have to do in case of a school shooting. I had to say, sweetie, in order for you to survive something like that, you're going to have to lay down and act as if you're dead. And then later that day, I got an email from her teacher explaining to me that my daughter was talking about this incident. And that she talked to me, her teacher, about the conversation that I had with her. Her teacher being so gracious, she said to my daughter that if she needs someone to talk to, she can talk to her. And thinking about that, I think about the teachers that took the lives that were taken and how they tried to protect the children that they could. You know, it hits me hard because my daughter's 8, and it can happen to her. It can happen to any one of us. And we need to stand up for this atrocities by coming together, speaking to your elected officials, banding together, start a pact, and really, really get to know each other, because we all are in this together. It takes a village to raise a child. So it's going to take all of us to protect our children. I have nothing else to say. I feel that a lot has been said already. And I just want to let you know my heart's with all you and those who have passed. And that we need to stand up. We need to come together. We need to get to know each other so we can do better and be better. Thank you.
I know we have more than one teacher among us this evening, but to speak with us, we have Amanda Forche, a teacher at La Follow. Hi. Is it as loud as it sounds from up here? Oh, cool. Okay. So I'm just gonna apologize in advance if I start talking much. I am in the process of recovering from pneumonia, and that sucks a lot. So, sorry about that. Like you mentioned, my name is Amanda Forche. I use she and they pronouns, and I am a teacher at La Follette High School. To be clear, I'm speaking from my experience as an educator, but not in any kind of official capacity connected with the district or the school. And the thing that breaks my heart is during first period, May 25th, the morning after the shooting in Uvalde, I had a student ask me, hey, did you hear about that shooting? And before I could respond, another one of my students said, oh, which one? And I had to clarify to 14-year-olds which
mass shooting, we were going to be mourning that day. I had to look teenagers in the eyes and say, oh, we're talking about the one with murdered 8-year-olds, not the one that was done to support white supremacy, not the one done in the grocery store. No, we're talking about ones of murdered second graders. And I had to look at my students and tell them that. And it is not the first time this year that I have had to scrap all of my lesson plans for that day and let my students grieve and process their feelings. And it is my job as a teacher to provide a safe and welcoming space for them to learn and to talk to each other and to learn how to communicate. I'm an English teacher, that's my job. But just once, I would love to do that about actual literature and writing like I'm supposed to be able to do, instead of whatever horrifying thing has happened in the news. I am finishing my 5th year of teaching, and every year I have had students, some as young as 11 years old, look at me and say, what's going to happen if it happens here? I noticed you have filing cabinets near the door. Are those to push in front of the door just in case? And I said, yeah. This year, my students asked me, oh no, we're on the 2nd floor. What do we do? We can't jump out the windows. And if I sound angry, it's because I'm angry. Every year, I have had to look teenagers in the eye and explain to them, I don't know why. I am their teacher. I'm supposed to be able to explain why. And I cannot look at them and explain why their elected officials are asking them to risk their lives and risk getting shot at for an education. I can't explain that to them. They asked me what happens here. What do we do if it happens here? We can't jump out the window. They asked me, Miss Forshey, why do some people want to give teachers guns? And hilariously, one student said, Miss Forshey, you don't look like anyone should give you a gun. And I was like, you know what? It's true. But that's the thing. That is the thing that a freshman in high school had to think about his English teacher and be like, I don't think she should be armed. And it's funny, but it's funny in the grossest way possible. Like our first speaker mentioned, Jesus welcomed little kids. And it's the part right after that gets me. Because right after that, he looks at his disciples and he said, if any one of you causes these little children to stumble, it would be better if you had a millstone hung around your neck and if you were thrown into the depths of the sea. Dear elected officials, you have been putting stumbling blocks in front of these children. Every day that I have to look my students in the eye and ask them to risk their lives for their right to an education is a day that our elected officials, that gun lobbyists, that everyone who with that kind of power puts a stumbling block in front of those children, and I'm tired of it. Do not, elected officials, ask me to risk my life because I want to teach some freshmen how to write an essay. Do not ask teenagers to risk their life so they can graduate high school. I'm over it. I'm done. I cried, but I'm done crying now because I'm so angry. And I don't think that anger is a bad thing. I think instead, that anger has to be used to call and yell at our elected officials until they do something. Because I'm tired of it. That's it. That's all I gotta say.
Part of our response is coming together tonight to acknowledge our grief and our anger, to claim that we are not helpless. We need to be embodied in this. We're not just hearts or heads, right? We're whole beings. And we have here tonight Cantor Jacob Mamie to teach us a chant that helps us connect all these things.
my faith tradition, there are certain prayers of confession where one might perform this motion. And sometimes it's interpreted as an act of self-affliction, beating ourselves up for the things that we feel we may have done wrong. But I choose to connect with it in a way where it's knocking, like knocking on a door. Right behind my sternum is my heart, and I'm trying to get it to wake up, to open up to that divine voice that tells me what I need to be doing, who I need to be hearing, and what I need to be saying. So I encourage everyone to open up your hearts. Let's wake up our hearts. I'm going to teach you all this chant that I learned from a friend who wrote this last week, consumed by sadness and anger. We will not step aside anymore. We will not step aside anymore. Try that with me. We will not step aside anymore. 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 Until our children can be safe and free. Until our children can be safe. Until our children can be safe and free. Until our children can be free. Until our children can be safe and free. Until our children can be safe. Until our children can be safe and free. Until our children can be free. We will not look away. We will not look away anymore. 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 Until our elders can be safe and free. Until our elders can be safe. Until our elders can be safe and free. Until our elders can be free. We will not quiet down. We will not quiet down anymore. 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 Until our future can be safe and free. Until our future can be safe. Until our future can be safe and free. Until our future can be free. Until our elders can be free. Until our children can be free.
be with each of you today. Honestly, I do this very selfishly because I find that during this time, I need to be there. I need to be in this space with these people, feeling that heart, feeling that song, feeling that chant, because I think it's what all of us need so that we can keep going. For those that don't know me, I'm an immigrant from El Salvador, Central America. It's actually my birthday this week. So as of this week, I'm going to be spending 47 years in a body that I call my colonized body. The history of El Salvador is that we're a colonized country. When you colonize someone, you make them feel invisible. You make them seem as the other. You make them seem like they're unworthy, they're expendable. And for so many years, for so many of us here in this community and in this country, we've had to deal with policies around immigration, around my rights as a woman, that make us feel second class. But every single time I go to Centro, that's where we do therapy with our young people, with our families, with our community, with our partners. And that's where I know that when those young people grow up, their things are behind change. And always will. So what happened last week for me was a direct attack on our future. Was a direct attack on the future that shares the same values that all of us do. And it was a direct attack in a space that's supposed to be healing against all the trauma that we see day in and day out. It is unthinkable to me that as adults, we cannot come up with policies that provide the most basic needs, that school needs to be safe from guns, when we can stand to do something about it. I'm overwhelmed by the fact that this is a space where my daughter goes day in and day out, and she comes home and she tells me, Mom, I'm proud because I've become this. I'm proud because I developed my relationships, and I know that I can be a stronger human being. I can engage with teachers. I can become whole. I am devastated that these are the spaces that are being targeted now. And so I'm here to stand and say that I remain committed to this work because it's important. But let's not forget that kids of color, Black kids, Latinx kids, see this kind of violence from guns every single day in our neighborhoods. So if we're going to change things, let this be a full holistic change. Let us do it together the right way so the right policies can emerge. I want us to heal. I want us to not have to suffer and deal with so much trauma. And I know that we can do it together. I'm committed. But I hope this isn't something that we share on Facebook, that we talk about now, and that next year we don't remember. 2 years ago, George Floyd was murdered. We need to remember these things. We need to realize that there's violence in our communities and that we need to understand each other more. And I'm really committed to doing that. I really appreciate being here today.
Judge Mitchell, you have a call to action for us?
So one of my favorite Hebrew scriptures is always Micah 6 and 8. It says, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? It's the idea that justice is not assumed. You must actually do something in order to create justice. And so what we're doing today is ways for you to do justice and not assume that we will get it. One easy and simple way is to start with what we talked about today is contacting your members of Congress. Your House Representative, your U.S. Senator. We know them. Make sure that staff knows who you are. And if they don't know, you remind them about keep on calling over and over and over again, all right? If y'all retired, that means you got unlimited phone calls today. All right? You got unlimited phone calls today, all right? You can do that in between playing bridge, all right? Secondly, contact your state legislatures. State legislators are important because they help shape policy for the state. What is not left to the federal government to do, the state legislators have power to be able to do, and they have the influence and they need the support of those in our community to let them know that they have your support, and when they find roadblocks, it's our job to make sure that they find support in this community to both heal and to continue to fight. Want to contact our mayors and our local officials, make sure that they are in lockstep with us as well, because, you know, as Dr. Karen said, sometimes the pain is so deep that it only is healed on a local level. So what are the initiatives that are going to make sure our communities are safe? What are the initiatives to make sure that we're knowing and getting together and that we're bridging those gaps that sometimes pulls us so far apart? It's very important. Not only do we need to be missing our children, but it's also a reminder that the stuff that pulls us apart can have very catastrophic things happen. And I think Buffalo has been a reminder of that. And what it is a reminder for me is that I always thought that the racism and the evil will be stopped at a certain level. But what it has shown is that it has found a way to still survive in a younger generation. So our work is not done and is nowhere near completed. You can also support steps like universal background checks. I think that is some low-hanging fruit that we all have agreed on, right? Right? Come on, come on, come on. Honestly, we have some federal protections in that we are required to do a conduct of background checks on all firearms, or private sellers are not. So we really want to expand that to make sure everyone is participating in that. And then the extreme risk protection orders, which we also call red flag laws, which are making sure that we give families and law enforcement officials a way to ask a judge to temporarily prohibit an at-risk person from possessing a gun. The ERPO is not a non-criminal process that involves a court hearing, as well as a clearly defined due process protection at the same time. But evidence shows that ERPOs, like laws, have reduced firearm suicide rates by 14% in Connecticut and 7.5% in Indiana. And recent polling shows that a vast majority of Wisconsinites really do support these laws, close to 81%. And then lastly, support programs like the garden program, turning gardens, guns into garden tools, or buyback programs. And this is the reason why. The reason why I say that, as a judge, one of the reasons and one of the things that we see in terms of gun violence is the number of people who have guns left in their cars that are unlocked, that kids get into or people get into, and they use those stolen guns in all kinds of activities in our communities. So if we really do want to decrease gun violence, we really have to decrease the number of guns circulating in our community. And this is a way for us to be proactive and get it done and get them off the streets, donate them. You don't need their muskets and all the other guns in the first place. And that is a way for us to do that. So do you feel like you can do some justice? Yes. Do you feel like you can do some justice? Yes. Pastor, do you feel like you can hold your congregations accountable to do justice? Yes. That's my brothers and sisters in faith. That's what I'm talking about. Come on up so we can have our final words of prayer and consolation tonight.
Reverend Hart, would you please pray us out?
Of course. My name is Reverend David Hart, and I am the pastor of Sherman Church on the north side of Madison. And we are all people of faith, there's no doubt. And if you are like me, you have been on an apology tour for God, amen? For the last several years, you have been asked by people of faith and people who are not of faith alike, where is God in all of this? And what do thoughts and prayers do for anything? Well, I want to tell you this evening that God is as ticked off as we are about gun violence. God is waiting on us in our arms and our legs, our hearts, our hands, to mobilize and jar our own complacency and act. And secondly, when I'm asked, what do thoughts and prayers do in moments like these, it does a lot. Prayers are designed to do a lot of things. It's first designed to activate the person doing the praying and change the person inside to do the work on the outside. And so when someone tells you that they are sending thoughts and prayers to a thing or a situation and they're not changing and the thing's not changing, they're not praying for a situation. Amen. They're simply play acting. They're simply pretending to pray. And that is how I want us to think about this prayer vigil. I'm grateful that we as people of faith have gotten together to pray for each other, for this world, for our community. Let us end in prayer. Eternal and everlasting Creator, right this very minute, this moment, this second, a young woman is being born. She is black, she's brown, she's white. She speaks Spanish, she speaks American English, she speaks British English, she speaks Dutch and German. She likes boys, she likes girls, she might not like anyone. But if she is born here in the United States, she has almost a 7 times higher likelihood of dying of gun violence than any place else. If she is born here in the United States, Lord, she is more likely to die from gun violence than HIV, AIDS, asthma, tuberculosis, accidents, all of those things combined. And so, for that young woman and for the millions of those who are in America and waiting for us to act, God, we have heavy hearts and we are broken with pain by the senseless deaths that are caused by gun violence, and we're asking you to act. Families are mourning. Children are living in fear. We are looking to you for guidance. We ask that you touch our hearts with your love and heal our brokenness where we're broken. We're asking you to turn us away from any violence and turn us toward peace. Help us to transform our own hearts and to seek peaceful ways of resolving our differences. Let our hands reach out to connect with those who feel alone, those who live in fear, those who are suffering from mental illness. Let our voices be raised, asking our legislators, our civic and community leaders, our mothers, our fathers, our parents, for action to protect, especially those who are most vulnerable. Give us the divine call and the courage to send messages demanding change while also scripting words of hope and transformation. We ask all of this in the divine name of God, who desires that we all live together in peace and harmony. And God's people say, amen.
You heard the words and the stories, the testimonies, the prayers. You have chanted, maybe you have wept. Now act. Go in peace. Go and act.